That was a click that sounds like we're recording now. Yeah.
Yes, correct.
All right. I want to do this new thing where we introduce
We start
ourselves.
with an intro.
Yeah. Start.
Not
What episode are we
It's
on?
like
8?
you knew.
All right. So
Hey, John, what's your name?
so I don't know. This is high science, I guess. I'm John.
I'm Kat.
Who are you? Who's this guy?
Oh man, I'm James.
All right. So, I want to talk about the brain today.
I didn't bring that one up.
And so, like, the brain isn't my wheelhouse. So, I think I'll say things about the brain, and then when I'm wrong, Kat will just kick me, and then we'll figure out what the right thing is.
Or I could just correct it.
You don't want to kick?
I mean, I feel like that you might have some bruises.
It doesn't
by the
go
end of
over
the
well on an audio podcast.
What are you trying to say? All right. So, first thing I want to say is we're going to talk mainly about, like, the brain itself. So we're going to be talking, like, neuroscience, not psychology, right? Because psychology is more of, like, the science of the mind, where neuroscience is more of, like, the science of the brain. You know what I mean by, like, the difference between those? Like,
One's the meat, one's the broth.
wow, that was a kind of good way to put it. All right, so, okay. So, we all have brains, right? We're all good with that?
I hope so.
So, in our skull, we got this, like, pudding, like, tissue behind our eyeballs. And it's the most complicated, natural thing that the universe has ever produced, as far as we know. It's so complex that we know almost nothing about it.
I wouldn't say that. We know quite a lot. About
Well,
it,
we know a lot, but
it still
Is it one of
pales
those-
in comparison to
what we
like,
don't know.
actual understanding. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like we learned a whole bunch about the brain, and then we learned what we don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really what it is. Like, the more we learn about it, the more we're like, fuck, man, there's a lot we got to figure out. Okay. So, it's super crazy. So, this thing here is everything. Is everything that you are, right? You decide to move your arm, you move your arm. Your brain's doing that, right? It's like, it's sending the signal to your arm to move. To see, like, all the vision that comes in, anything you touch, you feel, like, remembering people, remembering phone number, like, remembering, like, everything that is about you is in your brain, right?
So it's a pudding person piloting a meat Gundam.
Yeah.
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 Sweet.
That's it. Episode over. Okay. So, let's talk about let's talk about, like, the evolution of the brain, right? How we got to have this really fancy person brain as opposed to all the other brains that are out there. Because there are central nervous systems out in the animal kingdom, right?
Yeah.
We have a really nice one. So, we think that nervous systems happened first in jellyfish, right? With those nerve nets.
I don't know anything about evolution of nervous system.
Okay. Well, so
Right?
I understand the development of
right.
them,
Okay.
so I can jump in at that point.
All right. Deal. So, jellyfish have these things called nerve nets. There's no centralized nervous system, but they could sense they could sense the world around them, which is a big deal, right? That we evolved, that evolution happened, right? So, like, if you look at, like, how the brain looks, you could kind of tell that you evolved starting with, like, around the stem, and then things kind of grew around it, right? So, like, the first part that's really important for I think it's out.
So why are you handing it to
I
me?
don't know, because I didn't know what else
Because
to do.
you have a whole thing over there.
Oh, true.
So this part over here, by your neck, That
You're
is like,
doing a lot of
I know,
Well,
I'm doing a lot of
audio,
hand
dude.
things, I know. That thing by your neck is the brain stem,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the brain stem is responsible for all those things that you don't think about. That's like the reptile part of your brain, right? Like the most primitive part of your brain.
And even that grew up in 3 layers. The medulla was the first one.
Right.
And that's the one that turns into the spinal cord.
Totally, yes. Yeah, that's the one that's closest to the spinal cord. And that's responsible for like breathing, we're not thinking about it, heartbeat, blood pressure, coughing, sneezing.
Your alertness. level.
Yes. Vomiting. Has to do with that.
But,
That's
like, when you like essentially become more conscious when you wake up in the morning and then you go to sleep and your brain kind of turns off, controls all that too.
right.
The reticular activating system.
Interesting. Reticular activating system. I'm sorry. All right. So
Good
Okay.
kick.
Yep. No.
so that's the basic part, right? The basic part of your brain.
Yeah.
So still in the brainstem too is the cerebellum, which is like the first little bulb that pops out of the back, right?
Not technically part of the cerebellum.
No, it's not part of the.
part of the brainstem. No.
Oh, okay.
It's
Different
like
part.
the midbrain. Kind of.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Okay.
It's its own structure.
So all right. So the cerebellum's chilling back here, this lobe, right? And that's all about balance and coordination, right? So like lift your arm in the air. Now touch your nose. That's like a complex thing that just happened, right? You had to put your arm in a certain spot and know how to get to your nose, right?
And also know not to like break your nose.
Yeah, right.
If it
Know
wasn't
how to
for-
slow down.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the cerebellum, we would all be like, as if we just got superpowers. Like,
Right.
you go to like grab a glass and it shatters.
And it- right.
like-
Yeah, it is crazy. Like you think of those fine motor movements that you do all the time. Like walking, all that stuff. You can thank your cerebellum for that.
Thank you for jacking at cerebellum.
Yes.
Thank you for
Make
not
sure-
breaking my dick.
That would be
Oh,
That'd
worst
be-
That's
birthday
where your
ever.
brains go.
yeah.
Sorry.
Immediately.
Yeah, it was a little as soon as he said fine, intricate motion, I'm like, you mean
Jack-
base, repetitive motion?
Of course. That'd be a bad day if that happened.
Yeah. My cerebellum stopped working.
Okay. All right.
I have to go to the
happens,
hospital.
though.
Oh, stop. I'm gonna need
Like
to.
Parkinson's, like
Right.
that's when the substantia nigra stops working.
Is that what that's about?
Who's that?
Which is part of the cerebellum. It's one of the.
I'm really happy you're here about the brain because I just got like the basics.
So yeah, then it causes like tremors, like you can't walk
Right.
very well because like your balance is all off and.
That's crazy.
Gotta work
So that's
on
it's important, right? All right. So like that's all this down here. So like the midbrain now is like the early mammal part of our brain. That is like that's where emotions are like happen, right? So like fucking early think of like apes and like early humans like interacting with each other. They made the decisions based on like the midbrain part of something, right? Like you like some girl ape, you gotta like just kind of go over there and like just rub up against her or whatever. That's your midbrain.
Give her a fidget spinner.
You have to like integrate all your senses. Like you can recognize that you see that thing. And
Right.
You can touch it and smell it and all that.
Exactly right.
Maybe friend her on Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Stalk all her ape pictures.
Nah, that's some fucking parietal lobe shit.
Yeah. We're not even in the parietal lobe. We're not even there yet. All right. So that's the midbrain, and then the big part of the brain. Like the first thing you picture when you see your brain, the wrinkly aspect of it, that's the person part of your brain. That's where you sense everything. All your senses, fucking thinking, abstract thought, language, motor stuff, like that's all fucking in your human part of your brain, right? That's the cerebrum, right? The cerebrum's the whole section, and you can break up the cerebrum in all kinds of lobes, right?
Lobes.
So, the left side of your brain, it's broken up to hemispheres as well, right? The left side of your brain controls the right side of your body, just to make things confusing. And the right side of your brain controls the left side of your body, right? There's two like different types of like brain matter in the cerebellum. You have the gray matter and the white matter. And like I guess I should say that like the smallest part of the brain, like the smallest cell inside the brain, are nerve cells. They're called neurons, right? And they're all about like sending messages, right? It's like the wiring of the brain, right? And so the gray matter sits on the surface of the brain, right? It's like in like a thin layer, and then the white matter is inside your brain, right? The white matter is more for the communication. The reason why it's white is because it has like a fatty substance on the cells that make the sending signals a lot faster, right? And the gray matter is not as white. And like so, like you decide to move your arm, right? That'll be a signal in the gray matter that sends into the white matter down the stem up to your arm, and you swing it around like crazy, right?
Yeah, all that white matter is mostly the myelin.
Yes.
What coats
Right.
the axon.
The fatty substance
And
is
it
called
just
myelin.
makes it like super conducts all the signals. So it
Totally.
goes super fast.
Right. So like if you don't have a lot of myelin on a nerve cell, like nerve cells send electrical signals, right? If you don't have a lot of myelin, that signal could be sent like maybe around 10 meters per second, which is like 30 feet per second about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you have myelin, it could increase that speed by up to 90 meters per second. So it could like set it up. So you could send up the total to be like around 100 meters per second or 300 feet per second, which is a lot faster, right? That's the importance of the fatty substance, myelin. Okay. So, all right.
Like,
So
think about if we were as slow as like old ass computers, like at processing simple things, we could never,
yeah.
think about thinking.
Seriously.
Like we're doing now.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That speed is so important, right, for a lot of things. So the gray matter, right, at the surface where all like the important stuff happens. So if it's at the surface of the brain, in order to do more stuff, we need more surface, right? So that's the reason why the brain is wrinkly the way it is, because those wrinkles make it so there's more surface area of the brain. There's more, you could set up with more gray matter. You know what I mean? All right. So that's like an overview of the brain and the three main parts, like the stem and the midbrain and the cerebellum, cerebrum, excuse me. Cerebellum is in the back, that whole thing. So now the reason why we know certain parts of the brain do certain things is because like kind of now we can hook up our brains to computers, right? With things like functional MRIs and EEGs.
Yeah.
So you could see
Electroencephalography. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can see how the brain lights up when you do things, right? Like they'll hook you up to this thing and they'll be like, "Can you talk for me?" And you'll talk, and they'll see which part of the brain lights up. So then we say, "Oh, so that part would be associated
But it
with."
started way before that, though.
With
It actually started, like people used to think, the brain was just one big functional unit. And actually, two really important speech people were like two of the most influential people discovering that specific areas controlled specific things.
Really? When did that happen?
Yeah, I'm not good with dates. I want to say late 18, early 1900s.
Wow, so they've measured how they do it.
So Wernicke, I believe, was the first one. And he realized that people that sustain brain injuries in a certain area in the left hemisphere, which is now called Wernicke's area, like suddenly had all these problems speaking.
Interesting.
And like you get other areas, then they have problems with motor movement.
So they knew that a certain area was damaged, and then suddenly you lost the ability for that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was going to say that's how they learned a lot of it in the beginning by studying people with different levels of brain damage in different spots and being like, all right, this is broken, and now we can't do this.
Yeah, you get hit in the back of the brain, now you go blind, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, and then so that's like Wernicke's area controls like creating like the thoughts that go with words, connecting them. So somebody with damage in Wernicke's area might point to that microphone and say cup.
Right, but they know it's a microphone, but they can't
no,
put the word with it, right?
And they're like, I don't know what you're saying right now.
Right.
That's a cup. Like
It's like
that's
it's
a
like
rough way.
That's a cup. I mean, that's a cup. I mean,
it's a cup.
Yeah. So shortly afterwards, this guy named Broca discovered another area of the brain. Can you guess what it's called?
Is it Broca's area?
It's Broca's area.
What area did you break?
So if you have damage in that part of the brain,
Rim shot.
you know what the word should be, but you have difficulty like controlling the movement of the actual articulators, like your lips and your tongue, and so on and so forth.
That's weird.
To create the sounds that you want.
Right.
So their speech is like really halting. They might not be able to get out the k.
Wow.
Like
so like the thoughts in their head, you're locked in your head. You can't communicate.
Yeah.
Can you sign language? Okay though.
Yeah, but I mean,
You're
a
now
lot of
learning
times,
sign language with brain damage. Sweet.
So the disorder that's associated with that is called Broca's aphasia, and aphasia tends to happen. I wonder why. Aphasia tends to happen as a result of like a CVA. So
what's aphasia?
Aphasia is a loss of language or the ability to speak.
Okay.
So, wow, where was I going?
Aphasia, brain damage.
Right. So usually it happens. Somebody has a CVA, like a stroke.
Right. Okay.
So, like an older person just has a stroke and now has all these problems.
Mm-hmm.
You know, usually not limited to language. Usually
Right.
they
like
have some motor issues and all that.
A lot of stuff.
And now you want them to learn sign language.
Yeah. That'd be kind of tough, I guess.
Like a 70 or 80-year-old person.
Right.
This is
So
write
they
it
could,
down.
but
Yeah.
yeah, it's not that
Drew,
easy.
you flicking you off.
Wow.
You can treat it.
But
you know, a lot of times there's always effects, but you can make them a little bit better.
I
totally.
don't know, I think that'd be pretty degrading to the point where it's like dry erase board on neck, like, no, it's fine, I'll just write everything for everyone with this big neck board I've got.
Ooh,
But they kept studying it, studying the brain, like various people, and they developed this diagram, which we will have to add to a video.
Is that the
homunculus?
Yes.
It's the creepiest fucking diagram
it's,
ever. It's
so creepy.
But it draws out like which along the motor strip, which is like one section of your brain, which areas of that strip control different parts of your body.
Right, you have to look it up, dude. So
it's
so they
super weird looking.
they'll put like the thing that like they make certain things bigger than other things. I guess if it takes up more brain area.
Yeah,
is that
so
how they
like
do it?
your hand is
Yeah,
huge.
right.
Like it
Look
takes
up
up as much brain area as like controlling your entire lower half of your body.
Right. Did you know they made what was it called? Homunculus?
Homunculus.
Homunculus. They made a homunculus man. So
Oh
like
my
that
God.
image is super fucked up, but they also made like a in the shape of a person with the things bigger than
Oh
you know
God.
what I mean?
So wait, when we post this, does it have like can we make
I
this
can
the
make-
thumbnail?
Oh my
Yes.
god, yeah,
I
I
got
got the
you.
same one. That's horrifying.
Yeah, right?
Can this be the thumbnail?
Yeah, thumbnail.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thumbnail.
But now with the technology that you were talking about originally, like the fMRIs and
Right.
stuff.
Right?
Oh, that's terrifying. We've
No, this is the one.
we've realized that the brain's actually a lot more interconnected than we thought. So like you
Okay.
use a lot of different areas
For different
each
things.
test,
Right.
yeah.
So like different like things are lighting up in places that we didn't expect it to light up, things like that. Right. All right. I want to dispel the myth real quick that do you know how you always hear like left brain people are like more like they like math,
It's
they
not
like
entirely a myth.
No, it's not. Like I want to like so like people think like left brain, right brain, like analytical and artistic or whatever. But like for those, like you do integrate both sides of your brain when you're doing math and when you're doing art and stuff like that. Really, what they found, the difference between the two hemispheres, as far as I know, it could always be wrong, but it's like left side of your brain is more closed system, like more like detail oriented, right? Where right side of your brain is more big picture, right? Right? So there is a difference between both sides, but it's not as like set in stone as like mathy side and arty side, you know?
Yeah.
You know what I'm
And
saying?
like language is the left side for the most part.
Right.
But you are still pulling from other things like emotion and all that. from the
Right,
other side.
exactly. You need the communication, like saying that you're sad is like two different parts of your brain talking to each other, right?
Yeah.
Sad face.
I am sad.
All right, so you know, like so your brain, right? Your brain is a lot of shit going on. I already told you the number before, so I can't even ask you. But did I tell you the number yet? So how much power do you think it takes to run a human brain in watts?
Oh, fuck. A fuck ton.
You would think, right? You would think
1.21 gigawatts?
Yeah.
that's about it.
Going to space.
So you would think it would take a lot of power to run this complex meat unit that we have that controls everything.
Pudding
It
man.
only takes 12 watts of power to control your brain, right? 12 watts. So like a 60-watt light bulb is a normal light bulb. It's way less than 60 to run the most complex thing in the
It's
universe.
like a Christmas light.
Yeah,
Way less, like a quarter or something.
but like our brain,
Almost defies all logic, I think.
our brain evolved to fucking be super efficient with the energy it had, right? Because like you only have so much food and you only have so much ways you get energy from the
I
environment.
can't make my brain use up all this
I
crap.
gotta be able to do
Ah.
that shit, right? So like that's why you can only hold like a limited number of things in your working memory. That's why like you only pay attention to a few things at once. That's why it's like it is dangerous to talk on the phone and drive because you're multitasking. We're not built to multitask.
Says you.
You might
My
think
boss.
you might think that you multitask well, but it's really maybe you're just good at switching attention modes. You know what I mean? But you're never like attending. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You,
Never
you do,
cross-eyed
but
at
You do,
it's
right.
Not
It's
very
not
efficient. at
exactly
all.
right. Totally. So, fuck. Okay. Yeah, the brain's crazy, dude. The homunculus man is
Can we
freaking out.
also dispel that myth that you only used like
Yes.
fucking what is it, 10% of your brain? or
I
whatever?
forgot about that one. You're
bullshit?
absolutely right. So like,
Every movie,
yeah,
and
that-
TV show, and video game.
Come
that
on,
brings
you don't
that
want a
up.
brain pill? Make you use 100%? All your brain firing off at the same time. You're having a seizure. I'm shitting my pants.
We shit our pants a lot here on the show.
Oh, God, at this very moment.
But that's related to like the different localized areas.
right.
Certain parts are working at certain times for certain things. Now
Right.
that you don't use
Exactly.
like there's
Just
just
not use it all at
90%
once.
of useless space in there. It's
Right.
certain.
Yeah, exactly right. Like you're all 100%
a
your
whole
brain
waste.
will light up, but like at any one time, not all 100% will be
You
lit
mean
up.
if all of my brain's firing off at the same time, using 100% of it, I'm not just automatically smarter? That's not what that means?
You probably mean you're very good at multitasking.
Or you're
Like,
having a seizure.
That
Or
too.
you're having a seizure.
That's what I think.
I think it's more seizure.
And like,
Everything
you know,
hurts.
a large portion of it are those myelinated axons, so like they're just transferring. They're not
Right.
actually doing the thinking.
Totally, absolutely right. So it's super weird that so like we evolved to have these brains, right? And these brains evolved to be able to communicate with each other too, right? Like our brains evolved to push air out of our throat in just the right way that my experience going on in my brain, I could send it over to you through the air into your ears. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was
That whole process is just automatic.
automatic. You don't think about it. Like that shit just happens, right? Fucking, it's like think of like what language really is. Like like I'm making a certain really particular sounds to send what's going on in my head to you, right? You know what I mean? That
We
was
both agreed that those sounds mean whatever it is I'm saying they mean.
totally. Fucking, it was some scientist. I forgot who it was, but like think like a human is the only species that like naturally intrinsically tries to talk, like tries to with language. You know what I mean? Like babies will just develop to fucking like make
words.
sounds and say words, right? There's
Noam Chomsky.
Noam Chomsky. Yes, thank you.
You're
Yo, Kat's on tonight. Kat's with
You're
us.
talking about my thing.
I love it. Our brain correspondent, language, all that stuff. But fucking, yeah, so like, that's a natural thing. Like, we don't naturally want to pick up a pen and write. You know what I mean? We naturally just gotta say the sounds. It's a very human thing, right? Language. And it's interesting, like, you could also, another cool thing about the brain is you could see not only like how it works in an adult brain, but try to figure out like when certain processes happen as you grow up, right? Because a baby's brain is very different from an adult brain. Like, when does the brain have like awareness of themselves? When do they have awareness that other people are thinking different things than me? You know, they could do these
Not
kinds of
till, like 6 or 7.
yeah, right. Like, but like it's interesting that things that we take for granted, like how our brain works, like that wasn't always the case. Like our brains weren't always like that, you know.
Fun fact, that's called theory of mind.
Theory of mind, right? So this is a
The
little more.
ability to recognize that somebody else thinks differently
Yeah.
than you.
They could do a test for theory of mind. I forgot what it's called.
They should do it on all politicians.
The theory of mind.
Yeah, they should.
So the theory of mind.
Let me tell you something. Like, you Bill Clinton me all the time, dude.
Sorry, I get really excited. I get very handsy when I'm talking about science. Anyway, okay. So they do this test for the theory of mind. They're testing whether they're testing to see if you know that people have other thoughts than you have. Like people can have information that you don't have.
You're talking about the fucking doll study?
It may be. I don't know if it's doll study.
Keep going. I'll tell you.
All right. So this is what they would do. They would sit a child down and say, Sarah and Becky are in the same room, right? Sarah takes her cookie and puts it in basket 1. There's 2 baskets over here. So Sarah has a cookie, puts it in basket 1, and Sarah leaves. Leaves the room. Now Becky grabs cookie from basket 1 and puts it in basket 2. Okay, so she switches up the cookie. You with me? You fucking Becky, man. She's in those cookies. So Sarah comes back, and they'll ask the child, which basket will Sarah look for the cookie? And if the child hasn't developed theory of mind yet, they'll say basket 2 because that's where the cookie is. I saw the cookie move to basket 2. Sarah knows the cookie's in basket 2 because that's what happened. You know what I mean? But someone who has theory of mind will say, listen, they'll be like, fucking...
You passed it back to him for whatever reason.
Oh, sorry.
I skipped him because I was sitting there like this for like a minute. I was like, fuck him.
Yeah, I'm good. It's okay. But they'll... so if someone has theory of mind, they'll say, Sarah couldn't know that the cookie changed. Like, Sarah couldn't know about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. This is the doll study.
Okay.
When they first did it,
They use dolls?
they used dolls because explaining all that's going to require a fair amount of language and cognitive ability for the kid to understand.
Right.
So
Oh,
if you want
totally.
to see if really little kids can do this,
Right.
they use dolls.
Interesting.
They actually have the 2 dolls and the baskets and whatever it is they put in the baskets. And then they have one of the dolls leave.
Right.
And then, they ask the child to, play the doll and go find the cookie.
Oh, so it becomes like a game, like go find the cookie and where they look.
Yep.
Interesting. That's a clever way to set it up, so you don't have to explain all that stuff, you know? Fuck. That's cool. Another another crazy thing about our brains, though, is, like, how we interact with how we can be persuaded by other brains. You know what I mean? I'm reading this cool book, and I just read about this study that was done. It's kind of intense what they did. So, like, you know how fucking Nazis, and they did all the stuff they did, right? And people say all the time, especially, like people in America, they think, like, well, how could the foot soldier in the Nazi group just go along with what they were doing? You know what I mean? They were doing, like, some fucked up shit. Why would they do that? Are they all evil people over there? You know what I mean? But it's like, understanding how the brain is susceptible to persuasion is important to understand why that person would make those decisions to do those things, right? So a scientist set up a study that he was going to do in Germany to test, like, the German people. And before he went to Germany, he tested this study in America, right, to see why Nazis acted the way they did. And he got such crazy results in America that he didn't even need to go to Germany because he found that the same kind of process could just happen in American people too. It's not just German people that this happens to. But let me explain the test. So you're seeing how susceptible, like how obedient you would be in a certain situation, right? But they told the 2 people that they were experimenting on that they were doing just some particular different study. Like, they don't tell them exactly what they're looking for. So they walk the 2 experimenters in, right? One of them's an actor, and the other one is like a normal person, right? They'll sit the actor down on a chair, and they hook him up to electrodes, right? And they were saying what they're testing is, something like making decisions with electric shock or something like that. But, like, whenever, I think it's something like that, they get the question wrong, they have to give them an electric shock, right? So hook them to the chair. It looks eerily like an electric chair, right? You hook them up to the electrode. And then you go outside the room. And on the wall, there's a list of voltages, right? And it starts off really low, and you could go up really high, though. So the person sits down, and, like, they'll ask a question or whatever, they'll get it wrong, and they'll shock them. And the sound is hooked up so they could hear how the other person reacts. And they'll shock them, and there's, like, really no reaction because the voltage is really low, right? But then they'll start cranking up the voltage as they keep getting wrong answers, right? So the point where it gets really uncomfortable. And now the actor on the other end, like, will start, making sounds like they're really in pain, you know? So they ask the wrong, they get the wrong answer, and they have to, like the person has to keep shocking them, right? The power goes up, and now the actor is saying things like, you know, I don't think I want to do this anymore. Like, my chest hurts. Like, I don't want to do this experiment anymore. So the person with the shocker, like the thing keeps going on, while the the scientist guy will be like, keep going, like don't worry about it. We got to keep doing this study, right? So it's getting more and more powerful, the shocks. They keep getting more and more wrong answers, and the guy's like screaming more and more in pain, right? And they'll keep shocking him, and eventually, after it gets to a certain voltage threshold, like he'll stop responding on the other side. And what the experimental will say is like, I guess just wait a couple seconds and just keep shocking him, because we have to count that as a wrong answer if he's not going to respond, right? So they'll keep fucking shocking this guy all the way up to the highest voltage, where implied like something bad happened on the other side of the wall, right? And they would look at like the percentage of people that would go that far, right? They would do this experiment, see who would go that far, and a large percentage of people would just be obedient up to that highest point in the fucking shock cycle. Isn't that crazy?
Jeez.
Just because like the experimenter could like give off an air of like, you know, this is like, I'm in control here, like this is what's going on, we just got to keep going, like keep shocking them, don't stop. Surprisingly few people got up and be like, I'm done, like I'm not doing it anymore. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
How you could be persuaded by fucking other brains. So it's important to, I don't know, think for yourself about that stuff.
So that was called the Milgram shock experiment.
Milgram shock experiment, thanks.
And I believe it caused
1963.
like some like post-traumatic stress in the participants. It's one of the reasons there's like research ethics boards now.
Yes, right. So you couldn't do that.
One
I
of the many
oppose those
reasons,
fully.
but-
Yeah. I don't think you could do an experiment like that today.
No.
So something like we've talked about it before, but something I do want to talk about in an episode is like the
You got
ethics
so much good
of science.
stuff, good knowledge off on ethical stuff, though. There's
Yeah.
so much good knowledge.
That's
off
the
there.
that's the trade-off. Is it
It's
like
really
could we,
shitty.
like where like not only is it okay to do something that could cause suffering to learn more, but if it is, like, where's the line? You know, like that's really the big question. Like where, because it's not like a binary choice ever. It's kind of could be fuzzy sometimes. You know, and who decides where that line is?
Well, like, you know, poking somebody with a needle. You know, if you'd never done that,
Right. That's the thing.
doesn't where you know at some point you have to experiment a little bit.
Right. We'll talk about it.
I'm gonna poke you with something, man. We're gonna find out. Oh.
Right. Fucking okay. Yeah, man. So fucking what else can I tell you about the brain?
Brain is fucking awesome.
The brain is fucking awesome, dude. But really, like, what I want to be doing, like, with so far what we've done is like talked about like really kind of broad topics, right? Like we talked about life science really broad. We talked about like light really, you know, we talked about like a lot of big idea things. And like what I want to do is kind of lay the foundation for these kind of things so that we could talk about more specific stuff later, and you kind of know the context we're sitting in. You know what I mean? So we're talking about the brain as like a big idea, but maybe like sometime we could talk about fucking like consciousness itself. You know, like we have no idea why we could experience, like we understand like this part lights up when I lift my hand or whatever, but we don't understand the experience of being awake, right? We can't figure out where consciousness is happening in the brain. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Really weird stuff. And it's and is that even something that science could answer too? Like what makes us awake? Could we measure that point where consciousness is occurring, you know?
I mean, we can come up with all these little facts and figures and measurements and
Right.
all this, but like I don't think any of that explains like I think it's beyond our understanding to like comprehend that like little process that happens that makes me
Right.
speaking to you now.
Right. Totally right. It's like, is that bridge even there? You know what I mean? Like, does the facts and figures, would it ever touch on what really makes that happen?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Another weird thing to think about is like, so the brain cells, right? The neurons, they send electrical signals down the cells, right? But no neuron is attached to another one, right? There's a little gap in between. And in order for the two little cells to communicate with each other, it has to send out a chemical out into the space. Those are called neurotransmitters, right? So like it sends out. So we're sending a message to our brain. You with me? So the signal sends down the neuron like an electrical signal, and at the end it shoots out a little chemical. Right. The next neuron picks it up and goes, "That's the signal I got to send." So it like really reads the chemical and it sends out that signal. So the neurotransmitters help neurons interact with each other, right? And there are different neurotransmitters that do different things. So like serotonin is like a happy one. Makes you happy. Makes you nice, right? Melatonin makes you sleepy. But these are chemicals that are making an emotion, like a rise in your head, right? You know what I mean? Isn't that kind of weird?
Like dopamine.
Yeah, dopamine. That's another happiness one. So, like things like caffeine could increase certain neurotransmitters, right? Kind of like wake you up in a certain way. That's how like drugs affect the brain. That's a whole nother thing we could talk about too, is like how certain drugs will mimic natural neurotransmitters in your brain to make your brain fire in a really particular way, right? It's
That's
like your
like depression drugs too, right?
Right. So depression drugs, I think they could either increase the amount of dopamine that you produce, or it acts as dopamine and hooks up to your receptors. Like that's Molly, right? MDMA is very similar. Like the chemical is very similar to dopamine, so it'll hook up to your dopamine receptors, right? Or it'll increase the I don't know actually how it works.
But we were talking about Parkinson's. So what happens in the substantia nigra is there's too much dopamine. So one of the drugs for Parkinson's is a dopamine inhibitor.
Interesting. So do they feel really good? The fact that there's so much dopamine produced?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, because it's not in.
It's a valid question, right?
It's
Because
in
dopamine.
the balance part of your brain.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So
So-
it's not the like sensing feelings part of your brain. Interesting. Okay. Oxytocin is the attachment neurotransmitter. That has a large play in things like love. You know, right after you have sex, you release a lot of oxytocin to be connected to the person you're with. You know, which could be like evolutionarily, it could be that could be an advantage that you want to chill with the person that is gonna have a baby with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To make sure
So
the
you
young
can
survives.
protect them.
And I also
Right.
want to sleep.
That's the melatonin, I guess. I guess melatonin gets released. But it's interesting to think that like very human experiences could be traced back to chemistry. You know, just like the receptors in our brain and how the chemicals interact with them. That's like you could directly trace like the feeling of love to that chemical. You know. But does knowing about the chemical tell us anything about love, though? Like the experience of being in a relationship and connecting with someone.
No.
You know? That's to me, seems to be like the limit of science. Is like, it doesn't explain like the human condition, you know?
No. Because I feel like it's lives in the network of connections.
Yeah.
Like, it's not any individual piece. It's like the whole thing altogether.
Right. We could understand emotions better. Like I think it enhances it, but it doesn't explain it. I think that's why we need things like literature and like philosophy and things like that to explain like what it means to be a person, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and talking about the
Like
ideas.
theater and art.
Yeah,
music,
right,
yeah.
totally. But what's interesting is having those things just make the chemicals fire off in different ways to make us feel like happy that we're understanding things a little better. You know what I mean? It's really weird that interplay between like the hard the hard science behind it and the emotional connection of it. Right? All right. I think that was a good broad overview of the brain.
Yeah.
Right?
I think we hit a lot of topics specifically.
Yeah.
But
We got brains.
Oh yeah.
There's brains.
So I wanted to add, because the Milgram experiment is one of my all-time favorite experiments.
Yeah.
That one and the prison experiment. But because the Milgram experiment was done in 18 different variations, and it showed a huge branch into how psychology is also an extremely important thing in this test. Because, as you described, there was a sign describing the voltages and all the switches when we go up to.
Right.
Next to the switch for 300 volts, it says severe shock or danger on it. As we're up to the last switch, which is something around, I think, 450 volts, it was given an ambiguous thing, like 3 X's, like bad, don't go up here.
Right.
And yes, a vast majority of the people did go up to the full switch. 65%. That being said, 100% of the participants went up to 300 volts.
Wow.
All of them went up to the
All
point
to
where it
the
said
danger.
severe shock, and then at some point afterwards, depending on the responses, what happened afterwards, that's where people would taper off. But the most interesting thing about the experiment is that he did it 18 different times with different variations, and he got entirely different results based on all of them.
Interesting.
For instance, in one of them, because this was done at Yale University, in one of them he decided to move to run-down offices to have a different aesthetic kind of feel to it.
Interesting.
Only 47.5% of the test subjects went up to obedient levels, like around 300. Everyone else fell off because it had a sketchier feel. If they had, for instance, 2 teachers pressing them to press the switches, basically 2 people in the room saying, you know, you got to keep going, you got to keep doing it. 92% went all the way up to the max. Having someone else there also to be like, yeah, but you do have to keep going, makes people
you have that
go to the
group
max.
mentality then.
But there's also like different things. Like, so one of them, this was important. Sometimes the teacher would tell someone else to have a third person press the switches. That one went up almost to 100%. If basically you got the role of the teacher and had someone else press the buttons,
where you could be like, hey man, I don't think you should.
Oh yeah. But here's one of the most interesting things. Anytime it was 2 other participants or more, the presence of someone else disobeying or having someone else to mediate dropped obedience down to about 10%. Only 10% of the people went up to obedient levels, which is considered 300.
Can you explain the first part of that again?
So basically you would have obedience went up to like, they would consider obedience up to when you stop listening to what the teacher's telling you to do.
And what was the variation for that experiment?
What do you mean?
Like you had somebody else that was also a participant that wasn't an actor.
If you were 2 people in the room.
And one of them was just like, nope.
Right.
Only 10% of people proceeded
because the
to
group
obedience.
mentality was more like
it's like you see that guy going, no, this isn't right. You're like, yeah, I don't want to be the dick. But I mean, I kind of want to zap him. But
if there's 2 people in the room to press the button, you less likely want to put peer pressure.
So fascinating.
It's like peer pressure in the reverse. It's just like, I don't want to be the guy shocking this guy. This guy's looking at me funny because, you know, you have a second person in the room to judge. There's so many different, like...
So is there, like, any kind of risk reward? Like, if you answered a question right, would the voltage go down, but they still shocked him?
No. So they would ask the actor multiple questions, and every time he got one wrong, they would shock him, increasing voltage. So they'd ask him a question to get it right, no shock. He'd get it wrong, shock level 1. Ask another question, he gets it right, no shock. Wrong, second switch. So every time he gets a question wrong, it gets worse and worse and worse to the person flipping the switches, the actor, you know, ow. Yeah. But the entire idea of having different variations and getting completely different results shows the psychology on it based on, like, mob mentality, group mentality, having a different mediator. Yeah, the context is huge. It's madness.
The book I'm reading that I read about that experiment and a few other ones is called The Power of Persuasion, and it talks about like how salesmen do their thing, why cults are a thing, like why that happens, all that stuff. It's really interesting. It's really good so far. Psychology guy wrote it, and this guy, in order to understand this stuff better, he's a persuasion psychologist. So in order to understand it better, he actually like went out and sold Cutco knives, and he sold used cars, and he like tried to apply his principles.
But are they though?
They are. They really are.
And I just happen to have my set of Cutco knives here.
Oh, how much could that be?
$700.
7 easy payments of $777.
Easy.
But those scissors can make a corkscrew out of a fucking penny. I've seen it done.
And I just happen to have the scissors. I just happen to have the penny.
I need those.
Listen, I've wanted Cutco knives for like 15 years. I don't know what
Easy Christmas. Hit them up.
Christmas gotta go.
Only
Was that recorded?
$1,000.
Yeah, it was
Oh, fuck yeah. Yeah, man. Only $1,000. But it talks about like even like the cheapest thing that Cutco sells is like a $20 like vegetable peeler or whatever, and that's like one of their highest selling things is that vegetable peeler because like you spend all this time with the salesman and you're like no, but then you feel like you wasted their time, so you end up buying the vegetable peeler. You know what I mean? There's a lot of like cool principles that go
Get them
into
with the vegetable peeler. They won't be able to not.
The markup's insane on that one.
Yeah.
That's the trick.
Made it for 17 cents.
Right.
$20.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be some professional working though, like hard commission sales.
Oh,
So much shit.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
the weirdest shit.
I could not do that.
You gotta be a shark.
A shock?
Shark.
A shark. Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know. This
Grengich Gringuli? What's that movie called? Where they're all.
You didn't just say words.
Yeah, what the?
Gringinch
have a thing?
Ginguli?
No, I forget what it's called.
Yeah, it's definitely Gringinch Ginguli.
Yeah, that's the one. No,
Heard
but
that.
it's a movie about a bunch of like real estate agents like selling like shoddy real estate and all like arguing each other the whole time. But like they're all like the attitude of like they call themselves sharks and shit and like that
Oh.
mind. Yeah, you know what movie?
I know what
we
movie
have the
you're
big
talking
board
about.
and it's got a bunch of good actors
Yeah.
in it. I don't know why.
I don't know
think
about
it's
that
called Greenwich
name.
Ginguli.
No. I don't know, man.
Yeah, I have no fucking clue what you're talking about.
Okay,
There's-
so we're way off the rails.
So brains.
Right. But like, wait, I have a question though. I feel weird about sales because like I just feel like it's like fundamentally like manipulation, no? Like do you think there's like
Yes.
good sales? Like good come out? Like I don't know. I always feel very
Yes.
turned off by sales.
Okay,
Yeah,
like
Yeah.
because somebody has to sell new drugs.
Yeah, that's
Like
true.
Gary
Like
Glenn
like
Ross.
spreading the word of it, right?
no, like okay, for instance, commission sales. I don't really know.
Right.
You know, there could be a person who's trying to sell you the best used cars that they have at a fair price. They really could be.
Yeah.
And like they're not a bad person for selling cars. But when it is manipulation
Yeah.
for strictly personal gain,
That's rough.
That's capitalism, baby.
Yeah, man. You know what? I think we should teach kids how to be consumers. Like how to be informed consumers, like knowing the tricks that salesmen could pull on you.
Corporate
You know?
America doesn't want you to know that.
And,
Corporate America
how to
funds your
recognize
private
when
schools,
politicians
kid.
are lying.
What do you say, Kat?
I said, and how to recognize when politicians are lying.
Yeah, right. Just knowing how to understand the difference between the truth and like how to process ideas, right?
And
Man, I don't know.
fact from fiction.
I just want in like high school to be taught how to, change a tire, figure out taxes,
Yeah.
shit like that. I don't know where. I don't really want to worry about. All right, this is how you know this guy's just trying to sell you shit. Like, that's next
I don't know. I
level.
think that's important though. No.
It is.
I think it is.
So it's changing
'Cause,
the
like,
tire, and
everybody-
there's so many people that don't know how to fucking
Think
do
of
that.
think of all the times you've been a consumer and all the times you had to change a tire though.
Okay, but think about how much better salesman tactics would have to become. How much more manipulative the person would have to be if all the tricks were already.
Interesting.
Like,
Yeah,
ah,
making
Well,
new tricks.
we
They'd
do
figure you
teach
out.
that. We
Yeah.
just
I don't know
don't
how many
teach
times
it
that
in
change.
context.
Yeah, what do you mean?
Like, we teach being able to analyze a text and determine if
Oh.
it's fiction or non-fiction.
Right.
And we teach the difference between fact and opinion, but we don't do it in any kind of functional
Yes,
way.
right. We do it in a vacuum. I feel
Yeah.
like, you know.
So, like, people just don't generalize that skill. I don't
Yeah.
know. They don't realize, like, oh shit, I have to do that in
I have
all
to do that
my
in real life, right? I feel like it sets
do it
up.
when it's inconvenient.
It sets up a context where like they're always listening to like the authority figure. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this person seems informed and they're telling me things. I guess that's the truth. You know what I mean?
Are you
And
talking
that's
about
like,
school?
yeah, totally. So like then they go out into the world and like a trustworthy salesman like says these things and you're like, oh, it kind of seems like.
Hey, buddy.
You know what I mean?
How's your vacuum cleaner? Well, have I got some news for you?
I've got a
You're not-
1920 Lincoln Plymouth.
Think of how rare like kids are asked to like challenge what the teacher's saying though. You know what I mean?
$20.
$20 for Plymouth.
Yeah.
$20.
Yeah, it's mostly Rust.
That's a good deal.
How much rust?
How much rust we
Mostly.
talking? Oh man. So yeah, what were we talking about? The brain?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. The brain's crazy, man.
Yeah.
But like, we're brains thinking about brains. Isn't that weird as fuck?
Yeah.
Super meta.
I like my
Super
meat
meta.
Gundam.
I was gonna say, I thought we were meat Gundams
Pudding
talking
Man,
about
So,
meat
Gundam.
but James, who are you though? Are
I'm
you
the
your
pudding
brain?
man now.
The pudding man. Wait, are you the pudding man or are you the meat Gundam?
I was gonna say,
Which
no,
one are
but
you?
I am the spoon man. Shoutouts.
Shoot, who's Spoon Man?
Don't worry about it.
When are we doing high history?
When I read more books, I have a list of books I'm
Yeah,
starting.
We'll get on then, dude. I'll do it.
Next up, high history. Go.
What are some of the things you want to talk about for that?
American Revolution.
Sick.
Episode 1 through like however many it takes.
Awesome. Did you see that YouTube video?
Don't touch me.
Sorry.
Bill Clinton over here.
World, it's like his. I just do like a tap. You're
Yeah,
like
but,
way
like,
up my thigh, dude.
Yeah, well, I'm just doing it the right way. You're half-assing it, and I don't like it either way.
Fucking.
Get in
No,
there.
it's good. It's like
Are we
it's.
keeping all this? Are we keeping this?
Dude, I'm recording.
Oh, crap. Well, yeah, but are we keeping this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or did we find it? We're gonna find an ending sentence about a half an hour back, maybe.
No.
Yeah.
I like what's going on.
Oh boy.
What
What time are we at?
50
Who
minutes.
cares?
fucking. It's the YouTube video is called "History of the World," I guess, or something like that. You see it?
Yes.
Yeah, dude, it was
Yeah.
trending
Dude,
last
right?
week.
It was so
Yeah,
cool.
shout out to that video
Yeah, that was a sick video.
by that guy.
Yeah. We're not endorsed by him.
No, but we're endorsing him.
We're endorsing him though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a cool video.
As well as Klitko Knives and Glengarry Glengoovich.
With starring Miklos Strandanovic.
No, nobody's gonna know who that is.
Yeah, that's a pull for literally 4 people. Maybe 5.
What is that even?
Don't worry about it. You seen the new Star Wars? He's in it.
Yeah.
He was also in
Which is new? The 6th, 7th one? That's a new one, right?
he was in
Pretty sure
Rogue
the
One.
6th one
Oh.
came out like in the 80s, but whatever. You
I've,
know,
ne- I've never seen Star Wars.
You
get it.
cut the
Star
thing. We're
Wars.
done. We're done. We're done.
I've never seen it.
No. Yeah, done. The done. What the fuck is wrong with you? Go
Oh,
watch
you
it
want
right
me-
now.
No, you don't watch it right now.
All of it.
I've seen I've seen episode 3 and episode 7 now because I went with the theaters with you. The one with Darth Vader. That's the one I saw. I don't know. What to tell you.
Bro,
My dad really wanted him to see Star Wars, so he took me to go see Star Wars.
so it's all 3.
Episode 3 was the only one. I wasn't that into it.
There's a reason for that. Because 1, it's the end of a trilogy.
Okay. They fought in lava. Was kind of cool.
Yeah.
They fought in lava.
Well, like around
In
it,
lava.
in the proximity
This is
of.
so painful.
We fought lava. I have the high ground.
And
I hate you! Yeah, Star Wars. And then you fucking go home and go, man, why the fuck did I just spend $40 in the movie theater today?
Fuck. Wait, on Star Wars? $40?
$400,000.
$400,000.
It's
a lot of
That's what the
money.
movie theaters feel like.
I don't know. It was worth it for that one track.
It was.
Yo.
It's the best part of the film.
It really is. The best one of the film every time it's in it. In every one of them. So he's like, oh shit. It's like, that could be in Star Wars or Jurassic Park. It's so, like, there's so much tension in the action. I'm, oh. God damn it.
I have like zero idea what you guys are talking
God
about.
damn it.
God.
I have no idea
I
what you guys are
can't.
talking
I want to choke you a lot. Anyway, no, it's alright. It's okay.
No idea.
No,
John,
legit.
here's
I
what
have
you're gonna
them
do.
all on Blu-ray.
Yeah?
We're watching.
Yeah.
Alright, when? Not now.
I'm off all weekend.
Can we smash? Is Robbie home?
No, I don't know. Maybe. He might have
Text
come
him.
home when we were out here. Unless he was out with friends or some shit. I don't know. Anyway, next time on High Science.
Oh, I don't know.
Brains part 2
I
because
literally-
we said literally nothing.
I decide what I want to do during this after time. Between episodes.
This after time?
Yeah. I have no idea what I'm doing next.
We do exist outside of this podcast.
Yeah.
When?
We are, yeah. When?
When do we exist?
When? I don't know.
That's a good question.
Do we cease to exist when the mic goes off?
There's a tree in the forest. And
Is
then
there?
it kills
Is
itself.
there? Is there?
Does anybody see it kill
Is there
itself?
Is there a version of James that's just podcast James?
Yeah.
And then that version dies every time you kill the podcast, and you go back to being a different type of James.
To all of our fans in other continents, yes. I hope so.
Like they know what's going on between the podcast episodes, behind the scenes all week with James.
Kendrick Lamar looking at you.
What?
Bro, if he was listening, I would shit. He's like, oh shit. Then he sends me a white t-shirt with just the red letters damn on it. Oh,
Shit! Someone sent me an email. You could listen.
I'm doing that every episode from now on, just in case. Just in case he listens to one.
Seriously, send him an email. I'm sure he does.
What's his email? klamar@gmail.com.
Maybe he still uses K dot.
Yeah, oh, K dot.
K dot.
Prof is K-Dot.
It's one of his many rap names.
K dot.
Yeah,
Was that before Kendrick Lamar?
that's before like Section 80. Don't worry about it, bro. No, like, it's the same guy.
I didn't know Kendrick Lamar had like such a backstory.
Well, yeah, like he's like.
Like he's a real person.
Well, I mean, like I know, but
All right,
like,
so he's like pushing 30,
wow,
and he's been rapping since he's like, I guess what,
12.
mid-teens.
Yeah, probably.
Oh my god, pushing 30. So
But
old.
no, he has experience doing this one thing a lot for many years. He's been through some names.
I feel like nobody. Does anyone start rapping at like 25?
Yeah.
Yeah, like you've never rapped before. Then
Ever.
at 25, you're like, you know what? I think I'm
Fucking,
gonna.
what's his name? The
Me.
cook.
Who?
The-
Fucking
Action Bronson.
Yeah.
Action Bronson started at like, I don't know, 4 years ago or something.
That's such a cool
Yeah.
thing, though. Like I feel like
It's
no
silly.
adults are like, you know what? Fuck it, I'm gonna go rap. You know?
rap.
Let's go.
I like
fucking
rap.
do it.
Maybe he listened a lot.
Yeah,
It's like I like rap.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna try this new thing.
Just gonna fucking saute some shit.
Can you
and rap.
imagine going on stage to rap in like 10 minutes? Imagine how to do that.
No.
I know that I would disappoint a whole lot of people in front of me.
That'd be an experience, I guess. Yo, how people freestyle though? Like they just come up with shit on the spot.
Yeah, well,
It's wild.
Yeah, but it's still practiced.
You think? Think they have like words in their
you
head?
can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're like you just do it a lot.
Yeah.
You build up some like
Right.
safety lines to give you
It's like an art
but
form.
so you can just off the fucking head
Right.
do shit there obviously, but like
Yeah.
it'd be silly to say that they just go up there with nothing prepared. Nothing prepared.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Like
I feel like. Do you feel like like Robin Williams did the improv thing?
Mhm.
I feel like he had I feel like
So-
none of that was prepared.
well
But they
he's
practice
doing
improv.
I guess
yeah,
you're
he's
right.
doing like a practiced form of improv when they do like improv theater. Improvisational theater is a style
Yeah.
that is just a thing. Like there are practices to do to help you
Right. Get
be
better
able
at
to
like
own it, to hold a scene,
right.
to maintain holding a scene. Like there's the rules like never say no. Like always progress
Right.
the scenario.
Whatever someone suggests, you can't like.
Oh, it's raining out. Cats and dogs, you say? I just shit my pants. Like you can't go. Yeah, cats and dogs. Like you can't just stop.
Right,
You
right,
can't.
right.
You have to help
It'd be the
progress it. You don't have to turn it to a totally different thing,
Right.
but you have to continue.
It
to
would be the
progress it.
worst improv if you looked at me like it's raining outside. I'm like, no, it's not.
Fuck you.
No, it's not raining, man.
What are you talking about?
We're on a
Crazy.
stage, idiot.
Crazy idiot. Can't rain indoors. Bro, come on.
I mean, but like when you think about it, almost like the majority of comedy in your daily life and funny things, like it's all improvisational. You didn't think of a joke and then someone gave you a
just
setup
like-
and you nailed it.
Right.
You're like, man, I had that all week. I'm so glad you dropped that bacon.
That's
and
what you
I had
think,
that
dude.
joke
I
ready.
practiced
Like,
before I
some
come over.
stupid shit like that.
There was a banana peel outside of my girlfriend's job, and I was desperately thinking about stepping on it and falling on the sidewalk.
Whoa,
Just
whoa.
To see if everybody in the coffee shop saw me slip on a banana peel.
They're not
They're not.
as slippery.
They're not at all.
They're a
What was
little
that
slippery.
bullshit? I remember as a young child,
Trying
I
it out?
intentionally like put one in the hallway and
Like-
like ran and stepped on it. And nothing happened.
Just
I was
squished a little
like,
bit.
That's bullshit. Cartoons are bullshit. Everything's bullshit. We're all gonna die.
Wow.
Next time on High Science.
Existentialism.
Existentialism.
Yo! Okay. I touch you, you don't touch me.
That's
the rule.
Listen, we're gonna have this new rule.
Man.
We'll give you cack slap.
Oh, man, existentialism fucks me up.
Text Rob. Let's manage.
I'm gonna call him instead.
Do it.
2017.